G'day, Aussie Bonsai Bloke. Yeah, how you going? Today, guys, we are going to be working on this Japanese maple. I've had this Japanese maple for roughly 11, 12 years. Probably only 6 years in a pot. Before then, it was a garden plant, or a pot plant that me and the wife had out the front of the house. And I thought the root system looked too good to leave it in the pot, so much to the wife's disgust, I took it out of that pot and have been slowly turning it into a bonsai. So today, basically what we're going to do is show you these beautiful, beautiful autumn colours. I'll show you a bit of a close-up of the autumn colours. Looks really, really good this year. Best autumn colours I've had on this one. As you can see, some of the leaves have already fallen off and starting to break down. Some of the old leaves. And in the bottom of the pot here as well. But the ones that are still hanging on, super, super dark red this year. The autumn colours. Absolutely beautiful. This is on the coral bark maple. Japanese coral bark maple. You can see how red all the shoots are on it, and the autumn colours are just stunning. So this will be a stunning tree in future when it starts to develop more and get some good autumn colours. But today it's still in its early development stages in a really massive homemade pot that I made from a pool table. So that pot there is just made from a pool table. Cut up bits of fibre cement or something like that and just sort of glued together. So, I guess the first plan of trimming it will be, well, hang on. First, let's have a drink out of Tom Clip and Grow for Seniors. Let's have a drink out of his cup. Bloody beauty, thanks Tom. Check out his channel if you haven't. Him and his blackboard. Tom and his big blackboard where he has everything he's going to say written down. And he also has the weather there and the date. And the bloke loves to go out for a dance. Well, he keeps talking about it anyway. Right. Pretty cool. We're just going to... I think what I'll do actually first is just rip off all these leaves so you guys can see. It's a pity to rip off all these autumn colours, but it has actually passed its best now anyway. I probably should have shown you guys at its best earlier, but I was a bit slack. I might have actually, in my tour, go back and check out if you want to see it. I believe in my tour of the property and bonsai benches, this one may have featured in there with pretty good autumn colours. Pretty sure it wouldn't have been past its autumn colours, but well, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been too early for the autumn colours then, I'm not sure. You have to go check it out and see what you reckon. Anyway, we're just going to get in here, mainly pull out all these dead ones. The ones still on the tree generally are on the tips, right out on the tips. So you can remember, if you go back to this video, last video on this tree, if you find that, in about February, maybe March, I gave it its last trim for the year. And it actually responded with some pretty good growth. All of these tips are all new growth from then, from February, almost. I can't remember whether it was a late summer or early autumn trim that I did. But all of this is new growth from then. And it certainly has put on a lot. So we're just gonna go through here, clean off all the leaves, just get rid of them. Said make good mulch for your garden. Obviously not much mulch because it's only a few leaves in the scheme of things. But if you wanted to put it in your veggie garden, you could. Right. That's pretty good. You guys can pretty well see the branch structure now. I could go along and rip all these leaves off completely, but you'll get the gist of it. Look at that colour. Let's see if I can show it again. Colour of the leaves. Cool. Right, so apart from this weed at the back, let's clean off the top of the pot. Show you some of the root system. Looks like some of the water washed out, the soil washed out from around the roots there. So it's pretty exposed roots in some spots, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's probably got some good strong ones underneath here, growing straight into the soil. Anyway, let's get to it. So what we want to do now is just simply trim off everything we don't want. Do it branch by branch. So this branch, we got one here growing to the inside. Get rid of that one, don't need that one. There was actually two for one deal. Okay, this one here growing straight up. We do want to keep that to help give the branch a bit more fullness. So we want to promote that one. Cut off some of the dead twigs. Keep some of the extensions, some of the smaller stuff. If there's 2 or 3 coming from one location, I'm going to cut the small stuff off and keep the fatter stuff, especially at the bottom. Though on this tree, I feel like I should do it with everywhere, even maybe at the top, but we'll see how we go. Because it seems to have pretty even growth on this Jap maple. Very even growth over the whole thing. So, you know, it could be a variety that behaves well once in training, who knows. Internode length was a bit of a nightmare at the start. Here I'm going to keep a skinnier one because this one did have too long an internode length. But in general, internode length is getting smaller. It's shrinking for sure. And you've got to remember that I've been pumping fertilizer into it because it still is in early development stages, and I still want good vigorous growth to try and develop branches. So some of the branches are developing, but I would like to keep it going quickly. So, you know, I'm fertilizing pretty well. Here we got one growing into the inside and it's competing with this one here. It's fine to cut some of these strong ones back to here because there is actually a tiny internode back here which is only 5 mil long. So it can be fine to cut back into there as well. Okay, so that's cleaned up that bit of a branch. Some inside shoots here to clean up. Some little guy underneath here. Dead stub here. Another dead stub here. Clean off a little guy there, another one there. So you can see you get a lot of this little wispy stuff grow, but you also get some good strong dominant growth too. You see I had a pretty good year with the maples. We had a reasonably quiet summer and I didn't really get dieback at all from the maples this year, so that was really good to see. You know, I have potentially 49 degrees Celsius days here, which I don't even know in Fahrenheit. It's probably 125 Fahrenheit, something like that. But these maples still seem to do okay, and even if they burn, they seem to always regrow. A lot hardier than people think. And another added bonus with this guy is it also survives quite easily our winter, and our winter is cold enough for a Jap maple to get a good rest. So he'll go to sleep now and probably only wake up 3 months later, so he'll have a 12-week break. He or she, and then away it'll go again. But yeah, really cool tree. I do have one other Jap maple also grown from a little cutting type thing, a little seedling from a Bunnings store or something like that, or Mitre 10 actually, I think Mitre 10. For us Australians we have a Mitre 10 And I reckon I bought this one and the other one at Mitre 10 for next door to nothing, as a tiny little $10 plant or something. And I've just grown them up myself. If you don't have a lot of money and you want to, you know, do things cheaply like me, well, great way of doing it is just go and buy a heap of stuff from Mitre 10 or Bunnings or any nursery. Go and buy a heap of stuff and just put it in your garden. And every year, chop it back really hard and let it grow again. Maybe the first 2 years, let the trunk grow continuously. Don't cut it back. Oh, excuse me. Maybe the first 2 years, don't cut it back. But then after that, every year, just chop its head off. Let it regrow. Chop its head off, let it regrow. Oh, God sakes. And then, after a few years of doing that, several years, could even be 7 years, you should have yourself a decent trunk and also some decent movement, because everywhere where you cut it off, it'll shoot out the side, then that'll grow up, and then you chop that off, and then that'll grow up somewhere else, you chop that off. So every year, chopping it off, chopping it off. For a deciduous, I wouldn't worry too much about uprooting them every year like some people suggest. I don't know whether it's quite necessary. This one was never uprooted for a long time. This was grown in a pot, but a big pot, mind you. I don't think it's necessary to do that, but you can if you want to. But I believe if you do, it will slow the growth down for the next year. If you just let the big roots grow, it'll fatten up the trunk quicker. But yes, if you do that, you won't have quite the same control. But sometimes letting nature develop its own roots is quite an effective natural way of doing it, and you can get some really nice natural roots. My silver birch, which is my best rooted bonsai, got the best roots out of any of my bonsais, was actually left in the ground for 7 years, and it's got a really cool root system. And I never once pulled it up and chopped it or did anything. I just chopped its head off every year for 6 years probably, and everything else did itself. So there you go. So here I'm just basically trimming off anything growing to the inside or competing too much with other branches, so that most of the branches can get their space. Keep the better ones with less internode length, especially on a maple. So you want the smaller internode length you can get on a maple. Something like an olive wouldn't matter, you can, you know, they all have small internode lengths, but a maple, renowned for having long internode lengths, so you want to choose your smallest ones, as long as the branch is sort of half believable. So in here we're just going to remove some of this clutter. Just look where the branches come from. The key is just give everything its own good bit of space. Chop out the ugly, keep the more interesting, and keep the branches that are going to help fill in the space and create that fullness in the tree that you're looking for. With maples, they suggest leaving a bit of a stub or whatever to die back on. I suggest that's probably a good idea too. I can't see how it can hurt. Just next year, after it dies back, that little bit of stick that's hanging off that's dead, just trim it the next year. We're getting through the tree okay. So you can see also with the coral bark, it loses the coral bark look on the older growth. Starts to get some decent bark, the roots go sort of black, and it starts to get decent bark up here. And I wouldn't mind betting in another 10 years you might even get some proper bark on there at a guess. I'm not sure, it just seems like it would slowly bark up, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be just that's sort of how it'll stay. I'm not sure, but I am super happy with how this one's growing and developing. And last year I repotted it into this pot and the tree didn't look back. It just kept on growing and growing and growing. So there's a dead stub that died back last year after I cut it. Another dead stub here that died back after I cut it. Long internode there, just cut it right off. If you get one with too long an internode, just cut the whole thing off. Oh, sorry guys. Because in the future of the tree, if you leave a really long internode length now, like this one here, see this one? If you leave these both really long like they are, it's always going to have that long straight section doing nothing. So just chop it back hard. It's a big cut, but just chop it back hard and let it reshoot out. And hopefully next time it'll produce a bit of a closer internode that we can cut back to in late spring after it shoots out. Should be all good. As far as the time of year for doing this, look, I'm not an expert with maples. I don't pretend to be an expert with maples or bonsai for that matter, but in my experience the maples do quite well with an autumn pruning. I don't get the minus 30 degrees Celsius nights, so I'm not sure how I would handle that after a pruning, but for our minus 5 degrees Celsius nights that we do get here, it's not affected, and all these little shoots hold on until the spring. And pretty much all of them, all these little guys will shoot out in spring. You know, just looking at it now, it's actually put on a lot of little bits of branch division everywhere this year. It's actually grown like a trooper. So, all right, so back here, yeah. Yeah, this is the back. Right, turn it to the side. Back here you can see we've got a dominant branch getting further and further out the back, and it's getting a bit crazy, carried away. I think what we'll do is we'll shorten this guy, get rid of him, maybe even shorten up this guy and this one, and that sort of brings the back of the tree back in line. And you know, hopefully we get more growing out the front. This tree grew better after I took the shade structure down that I had on it this year in the early to mid-summer. It actually put on more growth after I took the shade structure down. So I'm going to try it without the shade structure this year. If I have to, I might get like a little gazebo and just put one gazebo up in the middle and put the delicate plants like this under the gazebo, and maybe that'll be just enough. Just a gazebo that gives it sort of that midday shade but lets the light in the sides during the rest of the day, the morning and the late afternoon. Could be the ticket. Won't look too pretty, gazebo sitting in the middle of me bonsai area, but should be alright. Okay, still got some dead stubs here from a previous cutback. A few more in here. Couple of little guys growing onto the inside here. We got 3 from this one spot. I'll get rid of this long poo-poo one. That one's gone. Cut these 2 little guys off. They were competing with a better looking branch. Here we got 3 forking out, so let's choose one that we don't want. Get rid of that bottom one. I want some upward growth. Don't want downward growth on a maple. We want it to grow up, not down. So in general with this tree, it does grow out, although I will say I did start this tree earlier on in my bonsai before I changed my style of wanting things to grow up. So some of them do grow out when I first wired it, but now I'm trying to push that up. And I think naturally they are sort of coming up a little bit on their own, I'm not sure, but there we go. So, as you can see, all the leaves are gone. You can see that. Leaves gone. And she's turning into a, you know, bloody nice tree eventually, I hope. Super good root system. A quirky root system. I won't say it's like everyone's cup of tea. Some people probably won't like it. The purists will say that it's a bit messy. I just want to bring this here on the hoist arm in, so we can do a close-up. So let's do a close-up. Just have a drink of Tom's, out of Tom's cup. Ah, bloody beauty. Right guys, so let me get you off this tripod. Look at that, all them leaves. So here's our root system. You can see looking at it, it's pretty cool. Pretty extensive. Here's where I say the soil washed away and the top roots dead now because they've been up in the air. But there'll be some good bottom ones under there anyway. So if I wanted to, I could come along and snip some of them off, but you know, it's not overly necessary. I'll just chop a couple off now. A couple of the dead ones, they're all dead. Maybe they're not all dead. Just chopped off an alive one, bugger. Okay, so we got rid of all the top ones there, and you know, we'll sort that out later in another repot, make it a bit nicer. We do have a crossing root here that's wrapped itself around but now molded into the trunk. Too late to try and peel that out of there, it's completely fused as part of the trunk now, and we'll just leave it. But pretty cool trunk with some pretty good taper really out to the branches. Still get to keep some of the coal bark look on the outside, which is bloody sweet. Look at that. Awesome guys. Alright, cheers for watching Aussie Bonsai Bloke. Please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, I will catch you guys later. Have a good night everyone. And keep on bonsaiing. Cheers.